Welcome or welcome back to English Extras. I'm Jean. I've been an English teacher since 2019, and this is the podcast that takes you beyond textbook English. If you want to sound more natural, then you're in the right place. I'm here to give you real world English, cultural tips, and smart strategies to boost your fluency. So, are you ready? Let's learn some English. Today, I'd like to introduce a very special guest. Please join me in welcoming Catherine. Catherine has been one of my students for years now. We worked together on her application materials for graduate school, and now she's a graduate student at one of the best universities in the US. Reaching a high enough level to be a successful student at an American university is a tough challenge. But Catherine is here today to talk about her experience, and hopefully, you will be inspired by her journey. Here is our conversation. Enjoy. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I would like for you to give us a brief overview of your English journey, when you started, and how you progressed to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. I started learning English a little bit in kindergarten, but officially in primary school and all the way to college. I did take some extracurricular English classes in both primary school and middle school. And in college, I started taking lessons online, and that's also where we met. And later, I came to the US for an exchange program, and then I went back to China, finished my study in college, and then I came back to the States again. And I don't think that's got English learning, but I'm still learning. I'm learning it in English. I guess that's also English learning. Yeah.
So, English is a core subject in China. I
Mm.
would love to hear about your experience learning it as a subject versus learning it outside of school.
So at school, in China, we are more like test oriented. So I guess that's why we focus more on grammar and also reading. A little bit on writing, but not necessarily academic writing. We were taught more about how to explain things and also how to describe things, how to write a letter, how to write an email. So it's more like teach you how English is, like how people, what people do in English in general. It was a little bit boring to be honest, but it was really helpful, especially with the grammar and also the way you write. That's how I feel about this part of experience. It's helping me a lot in college right now. And for English learning outside school, I guess my experience was more focused more on practical and real life English. In primary school, I took an extracurricular English class and it was more speaking focused and listening focused. We were learning with a native speaker, and that was also really fun because we did a lot of games in English. And in middle school, it was more context focused. I didn't do very well in that class, but it was helpful for my vocabulary because I learned a lot of big words in the class. Yeah, and for my online learning in college, it was the most helpful one because I learned how to really communicate with native speakers, how I write academic stuff, and it was also fun to talk with different people.
So, what is it like studying in English at the graduate level? Because that's difficult to do even for native speakers. So, how do you manage mental fatigue from living and studying in a second language every day?
I would say studying English, the thing itself, is not very hard for me because I've been doing pretty well in most of my classes. But I would say as long as you have a certain command of English, you can do that. But what is really difficult is living in English and also socializing in English. I'm an extremely introverted person, so socializing with people is really hard for me in general. And I'm not that familiar with American cultural context, which makes it harder for me to socialize with people in English in America. In terms of living in English, I think it is hard for me to make phone calls. You don't hear people clearly over the phone, and also people are talking really fast, and there are many accents I'm not really familiar with, and that's also the biggest challenge for me over the phone.
Talking on the phone is the absolute bane of my existence. I understand that. Like it's hard to do even as a native speaker. I hate talking on the phone to people, strangers that I don't know. It's the worst. So, you also speak other languages. You also
Yes.
speak Japanese. How would you compare your journey learning Japanese with your journey learning English? How do those two journeys look?
I'll say totally different. Probably the contrast. What I didn't mention is that every time I feel so like I've had, I feel that I've had enough of English. I will try to speak more Japanese as much as possible. I started learning Japanese because I was interested in Japanese culture, Japanese anime, Japanese manga, Japanese dramas, and there are all my hobbies. So I was having fun already when I started learning Japanese. And I started, I would say compared to English, I spend more time on input rather than output. So I did a lot of listening, whether you call it listening exercise or not, because they're most from videos. I won't say my speaking is better in Japanese, but I did know more daily life Japanese than I do in English. But what I don't do well in Japanese is grammar, because I haven't learned it systematically compared to English. So I think that's a main difference. Also, Japanese, the language Japanese in general is closer to Chinese, my mother tongue, compared to English. So, culturally speaking, it's I feel closer to this language. Probably makes it easier for me to learn it.
It's interesting to me that you said that you feel like you communicate better or you speak better in Japanese than English. And you started learning Japanese because it was interesting to you. So, what impact do you think interest plays in learning a language, especially to an advanced level?
I think it is really important. I think it's the main motivation for someone, at least for me, to learn a language. If I'm not very interested in a language, I don't feel motivated enough to keep going and to progress further.
This actually, I think, moves into my next question really nicely. What advice would you give someone who feels stuck at an intermediate level?
So I basically have two pieces of advice. The first one is to probably try a new method. For example, for me, I felt stuck when I was learning English at school. So I tried other classes outside school, and also I tried online one-on-one lessons, conversational lessons, which I think suits me more because I'm more focused when I'm talking to a person like one on one, face to not necessarily face to face because it's online, but yeah. Or try a new material. For example, if you are training your listening, probably try news or dramas or even songs. If you are interested in music, if you're interested in music, I think listening to songs and trying to memorize the lyrics are really good ways to learn English if you're interested in this way. The second piece of advice would be probably try a new language if you're if you feel stuck in English. Probably try a new language. You can try French, like languages similar to English, or you can try Chinese or Japanese languages totally different from English. And there are two possibilities. The first one is that you're doing pretty well in the new language, and probably that's gonna be a motivation for English as well. And also, when you wanna get away from English, you can try speaking this language instead. And the second possibility is that you feel stuck as well. You feel frustrated about this language, then probably it's a hint that English is probably easier than this language. So it's a good time to get back to English and keep going.
I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. Would it be accurate to say that's how it worked for you with Japanese? Like Japanese was a palate cleanser for you?
Yeah, totally. And also, since I'm learning French, it's like French is like the second possibility that I feel a bit stuck and I feel a little bit frustrated. Makes me realize that English is easier, probably easier than French to me. So it makes me want to learn English more or gets me back to English.
I think that we really focus on starting at the beginning and progressing in a really logical, efficient way. I think we think this way because of school. I think a lot of people don't realize that you are allowed to take a break. You can do whatever you want. You're not in school. You are able to decide how your English journey looks. Speaking of the intermediate level, if you had to rank the top 3 challenges you faced at the intermediate level, what would they be? And would you tackle them the same way now?
The first biggest challenge for me is to turn from textbook English to daily life English to real life English. I don't really remember what I did at the time, but for now, probably I will turn to online resources and check probably check the videos of native speakers as teens. And I really wish I could have seen them earlier when I was studying English at an intermediate level, because many of the videos are really helpful. And I think it's good to check um, English learning videos of native speakers and also for any other languages. I think the second biggest challenge would be vocabulary. I think that's the same for all the other languages. Vocabulary is the hardest because you can't just learn them all. It's impossible. You don't even know every word in your own language. I used flashcards to memorize vocabulary when I was at school. If I was going to start again, probably I would try to read novels in English and also reading materials in general. I think it's a better way, probably a better way to learn English in a fun way. Also, I think literary resources in general is more difficult, but more challenging, but also more helpful if you are going to an all English environment, and also if you are going to school in an English speaking country, it's gonna be helpful. And the third biggest challenge I would still say interest. If you have interest in your target in English, it's gonna be easier for you to either keep going or make progress. But if you don't have any interest in English or language learning in general, it's gonna be so hard to even continue doing language learning. For me, I will probably try to cultivate that interest, like try to find something fun to do in English, whatever it is.
I love that. That's what I tell a lot of my students and also people who watch my channel. They ask, "What do I do?" And I always say, whatever is interesting for you. You don't have to follow someone else's plan. You get to do whatever you want. So, yeah, I love that. So, final question. What's one thing you wish more English learners knew or believed about themselves?
When you hear people nowadays speakers speaking fluently and confidently, don't freak out because that's probably not what they really are. They're also worried whether they will make mistakes. They probably don't really know what they are talking about, like what I'm doing right now. But if they can sound confident without being really confident, you can also do that. That's called fake it till make it. And that's really helpful for any language learning.
Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your advice with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me.